previously scheduled. Good evening. Today is Tuesday, October 22nd, and this is a work-study special meeting of the Cave Creek Unified School District, and it is 6 p.m. Item 1.2, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Is there a motion?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America.
All in favor, say aye.
And to the republic for which it stands,
Item 1.5,
one nation,
President's
under
report.
God, indivisible, with
Since
liberty
our
and justice
last
for
board
all.
meeting, I attended the September Employee went of out the of Month order breakfast. there. I'd like to Roll say call. It once kind of went again, out of order, but congratulations to anyway, all all of members our of the board are employees of the present with the And also exception thank of you Vice again President for all that you do. Walker. She had I another attended previously the scheduled Cactus meeting. Shadows football Members of the promoter cabinet against present Golden are Dr. Creek, and Plutnik, we won. Dr. Hendrickson, And I also
Dr.
had
Jensen,
an
and of course,
opportunity
Mr.
to visit
Dolezal.
Mr. DeVore's Spanish class at Sonoran Trails. and I
Item
was very
1.4,
impressed.
formal
And
adoption
I
of the agenda.
So
needed to
moved.
work on my Spanish.
Second.
And
All in favor, say
Member
aye.
Moore is not
Aye.
here. I do have a couple of highlights of things
All
that
right.
he's done.
Item
He also,
2.1,
was at Cactus
calendar
Shadows,
focus group
home
presentation
opener. He
presented
had the
by
honor
Dr.
of
Jensen.
doing the coin toss. He's also been helping out at the concessions at the football games. He
Thank you,
attended the
President
homecoming
Busby, members of the
meeting,
board.
and
Good
he was
evening.
actually
I'm excited to share with you
visited Mr. DeVore.
this evening the work that our Innovative Calendar Focus Group has been doing over the past 6 months or so. I'm sure that you will find that.
It's been busy. I also
Just a second,
attended
I'm gonna
the
wait
home
for our
opening
presentation and
game
then
with
for
my
that thing to
family.
go.
And
I
then
think we're
at
having
the
some
next
technical
game
difficulties.
was able to do the coin toss as well, so got to go onto the field. And those football players were very big, so they don't look that big when you're up in the stands. So that was a great experience to have. I did also participate with my family in the CCUEF Golf the District, so a different setup this year at the tee box. A lot of great family time for that. Next week, I am looking forward to doing our business partner breakfast. We have another mountain bike race coming up locally next weekend, the day after the homecoming dance. So it's going to be a busy October for sure. And then I know the arts department finishes up the end of the month with their production of Alice in Wonderland. So invite all you kids to go see that. It's a really great show.
I didn't have anything for the last week, but I am looking forward to the coffee with the superintendent this Friday. So I will be there for that. And that's actually all I have for this time. Thanks.
And I had the opportunity to do the coin toss for the football game this last Saturday. It was a Saturday game, and Las Vegas came into town, and it was fun. It was a beautiful evening, well attended, and they are big, those football players.
The presentation. Okay. We'll start over. Good evening, President Busby, members of the board. I'm excited to share with you this evening the work that our Innovative Calendar Focus Group has been doing over the past 6 months or so. I'm sure that you will find that the work that they have done is thorough and well thought out, as we've been looking for creative options to do more in Cave Creek with fewer resources. While our group is not making a formal recommendation, we hope that you will listen with an open mind and consider the research and the data. We want to be sure that you're able to make a well-informed decision about our district's calendar during the November board meeting. Catch up. There we go. Go ahead. Should work now. I first want to thank all of the members of our focus group. If you served on this team and are able to be here tonight, several of them were not able, please stand to be recognized. I think it's important to note that our group was diverse and did not always agree. We represent a variety of opinions and beliefs about calendars, about what's best for kids in Cave Creek, and about education in general. I think it's safe to say that the group rarely agreed, and we embraced that disagreement and used it to make the ideas that came from the group stronger. While I have facilitated the group, we're going to have a few members of the focus group take the bulk of this presentation this evening, as they own the work. Please, I do ask that you hold the questions your questions for the end of the presentation, as some of those questions may be answered in our comments on the slides. So to begin, the purpose of this presentation is simply to present the process and the research that was conducted by the Innovative Calendar Focus Group, along with what they are sharing with the cabinet before the 25-26 calendar is proposed to the board on November 19th, 2024. We are not making any recommendations. They're simply asking that we consider these options. So we're going to begin with actually, if all of you guys want to come up, the ones who are presenting, and then they'll take turns. And go ahead and turn on the microphone. And then if you all will introduce yourselves just right before you speak, that would be helpful.
All right. Good evening, President Busby and members of the governing board. I'm Chris Hazeltine, and my job is to provide a little context for the rest of this presentation this evening. Earlier this year, what would have been the tail end of last school year in IBN, or interest-based negotiations, to speak simply, we had no money. And so our ability to negotiate salaries or anything money-oriented was dead on arrival, and we all knew that. That was the understood fact of the matter. We also, and just for your clarification or remembrance, we also recognize that COVID money, ESSER money, any particular state stipend money either was finishing or by the next year will have finished. Again, non-negotiable funds because they're not sustainable. We had no money. So it quickly became apparent for us that if we cannot talk about money, we can talk about time. So most of our IBN meetings focused on what is time, how do we help the teachers with time, what can we say about time. And about halfway through the negotiations or the IBN process, the idea of a 4-day work week came to fruition. There was a lot of discussion about that, a lot of research about it as well. To be very clear, the goal for IBN was teacher focused. But to be very, very clear, we also understood what is best for students is having a great and experienced teacher in front of them. So that was the impetus and the focus and the push for the 4-day discussion. Now, in perfect clarity, that's as far as we went. It was not brought forth for this particular school year because there were some concerns about enrollment at that time, as well as some other just logistical things. But for clarity, that's why we are here today. It started from the IBN process with a lot of great discussion, and then moved into the focus group with even more research and discussion. Specifically about the group, we met after school. So teachers and staff members were not inconvenienced about having substitutes or any kind of replacement there. We had a great many of parents and community members, and what you can see on the list right there, overall, that is our group. Truthfully, we never had a full membership. It was based on able to attend, but we certainly had more than a quorum, if you want to use a phrase. Great many people there, diverse community members, staff, teachers, parents who are teachers, teachers who are parents, everybody was there. And we had many good discussions. What you are about to see went through a lot of iterations, a lot of disagreement. No one argued. We were very gracious with each other, but there were some definite opinions. So you'll hear more about the nature of this presentation as we go on, but I wanted to give you context. Where did this come from IBN to the focus group to tonight?
So again, the purpose of this group, what they were tasked with, was to explore and identify calendar options that best meet the needs of the students, staff, and community. And we had to broadly define that. As Mr. Hazeltine explained, it's not always a one-to-one relationship between what is best for any one of those given groups. So the needs that we've considered were student learning, the economic health of the district, enrollment, and recruiting and retaining the highest quality staff. I want to note that this is an odd thing for a calendar group to have to consider. Again, we're talking about the difficult situation that we're finding ourselves in, and so we are literally looking under every rock, making every decision something where we can consider how could we work outside the box in order to stretch our dollars further.
And so that box was big. We talked about the status quo, what we're going to call the 1-to-1 calendar, a 2-to-2 calendar, a 4-day calendar, what's called a win calendar, which means what I need, which is a very specialized 4-day calendar. A great many things that were feasible within school districts and the logistics of running a school, we talked about. And from that discussion, the 4-day rose to the top. And there were some key things about it for us. We never lost sight, again, of what is best for students. And we talked many times. What's good for a student is a really good teacher in front of them. The 4-day is primarily meant for recruitment and retainment of teachers, but that absolutely benefits the students as well. The research, and there's a lot of research, I'm not going to go into it too much. A lot of, for like student achievement, it is negligible in many respects. But over a long period of time, student achievement does rise. So the focus was, again, how do we honor teacher time? How do we think different, given the situations that we're facing with our budgetary constraints, with the changes that we are facing this year and the next year or two in the future? And that's where this 4-day came about. I think that's going to be about my focus. Just as a fine tune, if you're familiar with the 4-day, many districts will either choose a Monday or a Friday off. Our focus was mostly on having the Friday off for several factors. One, at least, or mostly on the secondary level, we see, or typically see, about 25% absentee rate. Not to be negative, but if they're not coming on that day, that's a good day to have the 4-day or the extra day happen. On top of that as well, we have, and I can speak from experience with middle school kids, many horse kids, show kids, gymnastic kids. We are AIA. We are I forgot what it's called, but 4A. Yeah, we're 4A. Excuse me. So a lot of our sports kids have to travel, often the Flagstaff or farther distances. That Friday helps because a lot of games happen on Friday, some happen on Saturday, gives them that time to recoup. So in context and in brief, that's where the 4-day came from.
And Mr. Hazeltine, just to clarify, it's that we had 25% more absences on Friday, not a 25% absent rate on Fridays.
I'm sorry. Yes.
But
yes.
You're good. It's just for posterity's sake,
there.
I want to make sure everybody's clear
that's
on
good.
that.
And my one final thing is the next slide is just to point out one of the proponents of the 4-day happens to be very vocal and is a superintendent of the Warren County School District in Missouri. Greg Klingensmith has been doing a 4-day in his district for several years and features prominently in a lot of the research. So it isn't just data researchers that we're looking at. We're also looking at the people who are in the trenches having to make this work.
Thank you. Ultimately, we needed to gather some community input. We knew that that was something that was absolutely going to be important. The results weren't necessarily what we had expected to see, but we needed to narrow this down to 3 calendar options, and we wanted to keep the options as simple as possible. And so, so then we surveyed everyone, all families, September 4th through 11th.
Awesome. She asked us to introduce ourselves. I'm Emily Hill. I'm the Director of Data and Assessment here in Cave Creek, and I also am a parent to 3 boys at the high school. So the first thing we did once we decided that we were going to offer these 3 options was we sent emails out to our family. Emails went out directly to our CCUSD families if they opted in Power School. So that's also a very important thing to note, that if you block our emails, you won't get it. You may not have received it. So we tried to also come at you from other ways by advertising and putting the survey within our staff newsletters, our student newsletters that go out to our families, and then we also did social media posts reminding our families and our staff to take the surveys. The options that were given were Concept 1, which is our current calendar, or the 1-2-1, the Concept 2, which is the 2-2-2, and then Concept 3 for the 4-day week. It was basically an overview of each concept. It did not get down into the nitty-gritty and details and what it would look like. Although those conversations had happened, we really were tasked with getting together 3 different calendars that we could present to our stakeholders and see which ones they wanted to move forward with, and then we would do that legwork. Our survey responses, as you can see, we had about 1,467 from our parents. About 1,378 of those were valid surveys. Miss Vicki Fisher-Boone's going to go into which ones were valid, but the most of it were families such as myself that are split households. So I took the survey, and then perhaps my ex-husband took the survey as well. And so we wanted to make sure that we were just accounting for one family in that. And again, she'll go through that a little bit more. But as you go through it, you can see that a normal survey response is about 5 to 30% is considered a good. Ours was about 35%. So when you look at that 1,378, about 3,500, we had a pretty good return, and then it matches our populations at the schools as well. So for example, 5% of our students attend DSA, 3% of our surveys from parents were from DSA, so they matched pretty well. Cactus Shadows makes up 35% of our district. They had a 34% survey response rate. So pretty much in line there. And then our staff surveys, we had 270 out of our 427 staff members. And then how that data was cleaned, I'm going to turn it over to Miss Vicki.
Good evening. My name is Vicki Fisher-Boone, and I am the systems engineer in the technology department. So I work with data mining on a daily basis. Dr. Jensen and myself analyzed the data using Excel formulas to scrub the results. We verified that every student submitted was an active enrolled student. We verified duplicated student numbers in the case of 2 or more submissions. We verified the date of the one to count as the stamp date. In a few that a student number did not match up, we used alternate data points, such as email addresses, to resolve the differences. In these cases, we only had 3 that we were not able to identify. We worked with copy files not to change the original submitted data, so that we have tracking sequences if needed. With reviewing the data, we felt that the data for this survey was extremely clean, which turned into accurate reporting for the surveys. Thank you.
Good evening, I'm Kelly Zivchuk, the principal at Desert Sun Academy. The next few slides that you will see show our survey results, starting with parents, then employees, and then a combination of both parents and employees. On this first slide here, as you can see, it's organized in columns, starting with elementary, then secondary, and then a combination of K-12. We will spend more time on the slide that combines both the parents and the employees. So this slide is the same information presented in the previous slide, but in a bar graph. And then this would be just the employees in our district. And then this is the staff only format in a bar graph. And in this one, it is our community, so parents and employees. So just noting a few things on this slide, the mean score is about the same for a 1-2-1 calendar as the 4-day. And there's about 106 more positive sentiments for the 1-2-1 than the 4-day calendar. And there's 106 more negative sentiments for the 4-day than the 1-2 calendar. You will notice that this slide is a combination of both elementary and secondary as well. And then this is the same information on the previous slide, shown in a bar graph. And then clearly, the 4-day calendar is something that people strongly like and have had a positive response to in our survey results. Thank you.
Hello, I am Doug Kremer. I'm a parent here with 3 students in the district. These are the 2 calendar options for 2025 and 2026 school year. The 5-day calendar requires 180 days and a minimum amount of instructional minutes. The 4-day calendar requires 144 days and a minimum amount of instructional minutes as well. Our draft has 146 school days on the 4-day calendar. On the next slide, both drafts exceed the state required instructional minutes if we do not change the start and end times for the school day. However, seniors would be required to attend 5 periods each day to meet the required minutes on the 4-day option. Also, I want to note that the 4-day calendar is significantly cleaner than the current calendar, because all conferences and professional development will take place on Fridays. Just to give you a little kind of background into my feelings as a parent, when this calendar came out, basically as we see up here, I hated it. It's messy, it's complicated, a lot of different things going on, a lot of things to juggle there with the half days and the early release. You see on this calendar 6 half days for K through 8, 2 half days from 9 through 12, and 37 90-minute early release days, and then 9 holidays for students, versus 0 half days, 0 90-minute release days, and then there's 6 holidays for students. So, I don't know, my perspective, I have 3 kids. I have 1 at Black Mountain, I have 1 at Sonoran Trails, and 1 at Cactus Shadows. Just to give you a little idea, when I look at these, what I see, I've had the pleasure of having 3 kids, having to take 3 kids to orthodontist appointments over the last year. No fun, regular appointments, 3 different kids. They've missed a lot of school because of it. In addition, obviously, there's dentist and doctor appointments. And I have a student at the high school in varsity sports. He's a wrestler, and he missed a lot of time on Fridays last year because of sports, having to travel. So I just want to point that out from my perspective. I started out on this committee as this focus group, as we talked about the different things. I wasn't so hot on a 4-day calendar, but as we started talking about it more in terms of teachers and retention, and I know that's a huge problem we have here at the moment, I've really grown to love this, and I would hope that if this is something that the board decides to adopt, that students or parents would come on board with it. Go to the next slide here. So the CCUSD calendar focus group asked the cabinet to consider the 4-day calendar for the 2025 to 26 school year as one component of a larger effort to recruit and retain high-quality teachers. We asked that the cabinet review the data we have collected and make a recommendation to the governing board at the November governor meeting. I'd like to clarify that the focus group conclusions only account for the calendar group's perspective and may not see the bigger picture for the district. For example, if there's a way to pay teachers more, great, let's do it. But, as far as we know, we're not privy privy to what's happening on outside of what we're looking at in terms of recruiting and training high quality teachers. For this reason, the final recommendation for the governing board from the cabinet may be different than what we have provided here, because, like I said, there may be other plans to recruit and retain high quality teachers, and I think that's everything.
Thank you. So with that, we'd be happy to entertain any questions. If you all have questions, understanding that we have not made a proposal, and this is really something that we get to sit on for a month and consider.
Thank you.
President Busby, members of the boards, I'd also like to remind you that this is a presentation only regarding the work of the focus group and their input to the cabinet and me. I asked them to present publicly rather than just to the cabinet before the action came to you for a decision. I appreciate all the work they have done leading to their ideas we heard this evening. Ultimately, I will bring a calendar recommendation for your consideration and action to our next business meeting after examining their work thoroughly, as well as the priorities of putting students at the heart of our decision-making, promoting current and future financial stability for the district, and listening to our school community as we are moving forward together.
All righty. Well, first of all, thank you to everybody on the committee. I know it was a huge time commitment, and I appreciate all of your time, effort, energy, and insights. So with that, I'm going to ask my compadres here. Anybody have any questions?
Wow, this was a nice thing to open up and read today. Well, I guess the first thing that I would be wanting to put this through is, as Superintendent Dolezal says, I would like to know what your process, your thinking was as far as how this is good for students and will it put us in a better financial shape. Can anybody speak to those things?
Sure. Member Fortney, I'm going to have Mr. Hazeltine, if you want to speak to that, and I'll fill in.
To be honest, this is not a money-making venture. There's a great deal of research out there, and it all pretty much aims to, let's say, between 0.5 and at best maybe 4% savings in money. So knowing that full well, this was never with that in mind. Back to IBN, we then focused on time. In terms of student achievement, over a longer period of time from districts that have been doing this, particularly Greg Klingon-Smith's district in Missouri, while every change has certainly a hit in terms of student academic achievement, it does rise up. It does not promote it in a superior way, but nor does it diminish it as well. It pretty much, I'm sorry for the term, breaks even. So the argument about that tends to be moot. Again, back to money saving. It never is purported to be a money saving venture. And all the research, including Greg Klingon-Smith, that's where I got my number from him. He's at about 3%. So again, more about time than money in this case.
And Member Fortney, I just want to add, because believe it or not, we've discussed this a lot. So I do have a list here. How is this good for kids? So some of the reasons we're having the best teachers in front of kids is what's best for kids. Another one, we have no reason to believe that it's not good for kids. The research indicates that if there's a decline, it's negligible, and in a context like ours, it's different. Given the information that we have and the constraints of our district funding, the group, some members of the group, I should say, because I don't want to say it's everyone, does believe that that was what was best in terms of recruiting and retaining the highest quality teachers. And then depending on how far you want to get away from the classroom, you might argue it does provide kids more time with their families, and most families, I would like to think, are good for kids. And then the last one is that We've also been studying unstructured time in our kids' as overscheduled worlds, and so some people can also, I've seen that argument as well, that it provides students with some more unstructured time in their week, and that could be kids. Again, we could make the stretch as far as we want to go, and so I don't know how far down we want to go, because you could also make some counter arguments to all of those as well.
Good. Have you guys done the modeling on fallout? Meaning, well, I get the teacher play here. I mean, this is job 101, unlimited PTO. You play the game to get the retention and counter your point. My concern would be fallout, meaning students are the funding mechanism for what we've got going on based on our challenges. So have we done or thought of any survey to weigh out, if we did 4-day, how many people would we lose? Because ultimately that decision factor probably comes at the parent level.
Absolutely, Member Moore. That's another great question, and that's one that while we considered enrollment, it was not our primary purpose. Our primary purpose was to make sure we had quality teachers and that we used a calendar that would be innovative. You could look at it and say, if we were to go back up to some of that data,
Yep.
we could make some inferences and say that, there's let me go back to where the numbers are added up. Negative sentiments about the 4-day. So we could say all of those negative sentiments are going to leave. That's 567 students who are going to leave our school district. We could choose to make that jump, but then for that logic, we also have to make the same jump to the 121, that 461 families disagree with that. So that is a hard one to say, and in my experience, when we've surveyed families to say, are you going to come or go, we get some decent responses, but it's never super accurate, and that makes it very difficult for Dr. Pletnick to make his predictions for how we're going to build our budget, no matter what.
And Member Moore, just for clarity, there are no longitudinal studies about 4-day. The research does not go that far back because, relatively speaking, this is a new concept for a great many districts. Anecdotally, though, it has been very positive for student enrollment. That's not really the answer to your question. Unfortunately, the research does not have a definitive answer for you other than anecdotal.
Right. So to that point, when you take the model of Missouri and you take our district, and it's not rural, and some of the points to that other graph that you guys had, how do you feel we stack up in that model?
Quite well, because we have Cartwright District, we have the Liberty District, we have the Wickenburg District.
And when you say these districts, what are you saying? They're doing the 4-day? Or
Yes, they are. Okay. Correct. They are doing the 4-day. So there's more parity in that respect than in, as you said, a rural district in Missouri. There are, I lost the numbers, at 2,100. There are a great many districts in the country that are pursuing this for very much the same reason and the same issues we are. All a little bit different, but coming down to, yes, money, but retention and recruitment of teachers as well, and what is good for kids.
Do you really feel that we have the money? I mean, the money thing seems kind of, I don't know. It seems a zero-sum game, because at the end of the day, you still are going to play a 5-day. You just got done saying that on Fridays, the teachers would be here for training, admin, so on. So you're really not gaining that time off.
Not entirely.
Correct. So you're kind of back to the 1-2-1.
No,
right?
I'm disagreeing with you, sir.
Oh, okay. I like disagreement.
One of the key aspects of a 4-day is what's called the 100-80-100.
Okay.
And that is 100% salary at 80% work with 100% productivity. In corporate studies that have done the 4-day, both nationally and internationally, if that model sticks, this has been quite successful. If we futz with that model, then you're right. Everything falls apart. So we're not looking necessarily at, for lack of a better percentage, 100% work hours. The work hours will be reduced. The salaries will be the same. And it has been shown productivity does increase. This is more than we want to talk about today, about the actual nitty-gritties of what that Friday would look like. That is probably more for an IBN thing. But just on the global aspect of it, corporations have discovered. That 100-80-100 has been very successful for them.
Are you talking about school-related or businesses in general?
Both. The model I gave you comes from corporate, but it has trickled down into school districts. Warren County specifically is using it, and that model does work incredibly well for them.
Okay.
So remember, more teachers would work some Fridays, not all the Fridays.
No, I got you.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
No, it does. I'm just trying to get down to the point of this isn't a.
It does not cost savings.
Well,
Is it a
there's
full
there's not a
5
cost
day?
savings,
No.
and there could be an expense that we
It
don't.
would not
There's
be
a
a
blind
full 5
expense
day.
that we don't see yet, unless you ran some type of modeling to dispute that.
With the calendar committee, there has not been an in-depth modeling of the 4-day work week and the expenses that would be associated between the cost savings or any additional expenses for parents. So again, I think Dr. Jensen, as explained, was more exploratory in nature of looking at the calendar. Certainly, depending upon which calendar is adopted, that budgeting work is going to require some lifting. Certainly, if we do change the model, it would require trying to understand new models and understanding models from school districts that have moved to the 4-day week. But again, predicting student counts is going to be a little bit more difficult, and projecting student count will be a little bit more difficult. But again, financially, there'll also be other items that we would have to consider. As Mr. Hazeltine said, a lot of the IBN negotiations would have to take place, but also there would have to be discussions regarding our classified staff.
Right. Okay.
I'm just curious. I keep hearing things like research has been done and data's out there. I would like to see that research. Like I would like to read for myself before I'm going to vote on something that affects our district. What is this research? And I'm not suggesting that.
No, I'd be happy to.
I
I won't give you the full thing because it's this thick, but I'll give you the links and I will.
Remember, Omar, I already have that compiled, and I believe I've shared it once, but I will make sure it goes in this Friday's board update so that you have the full. What we've done is basically an annotated. Very roughly done, but basically an annotated bibliography of these different research articles, so then you can see them all.
And does that contain research on student data? Meaning, what is the law? I know you use the word anecdotal. I'd love to know what you mean exactly by that with relation to this. But my biggest question is how much study has really been done on students? Like, do they have better test scores? Overall, over the course of, let's say, 4 years, let's say you take a kid from start to finish high school, for instance, or whatever, do we have data that shows, wow, the district numbers, testing increased and this increased and all of that? Because that really, for me personally, is, again, the biggest concern with students being our number one. I totally get that good teachers create.
So your wow factor is going to be in student behavior. Particularly bullying, and I don't want to diminish what I'm about to say, but the lesser crimes, so to speak, that happen on a daily basis, significant reduction with the 4-day. With things like drug use, overt assault and violence, not so much. In terms of big test scores, as you were referring to, the data is showing it's about break even. Which in this case I see as a positive, no significant hit. There might be in that 1 year, but you mentioned 4 years, and the data is showing that it either stays or in some cases, and you'll see this actually rises a little bit. Statistically significant, I don't recall so, but there is a rise.
Yeah, statistically rising is not as significant as statistically lowering.
Yeah.
Obviously, so that would be a good thing. Okay, let me see here.
Is that all your questions? Well, and remember, Omar, just to clarify real quickly too, even though this is really a meta-analysis of multiple other research studies, I'm getting there, and I know it's hard to see on the screen, but I think in your printouts you can see it better, that it does show that there's, again, very little difference. So this is a combination of multiple research studies, and you'll see that people had perceived that, for example, that districts would save money, and then the data was not, like, it did not show one way or the other. And so if you read that, if you look at that one little snippet, and then I have the link down below to that full article that explains that a little bit better, but it will show that what people perceived was in the first, or the middle column, and then what actually happened is on the right side column. And so you'll see that it is very inconclusive. We keep using that term. It's very inconclusive as to whether it's effective for student achievement or not.
I guess the other question I would have is, and I totally understand it's difficult to put a survey out there and say, would you stay, would you go, what are your thoughts, whatever. But my fear is, and I totally get what you're saying about family time. I'm looking at my own situation and what it would have been like had my children have to go to that. And as a family, we would have been fortunate at that time that it wouldn't have been a big burden in terms of having childcare or whatever else for that fifth day. And I'm concerned about a burden that is already placed on parents with all the craziness. And I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name, the parent, but just talking about, running 3 kids around and balancing that. So I want to make sure that whatever decision we make, we're serving those needs as well. And I believe I saw somewhere in the paperwork that we are still going to offer like childcare services and stuff like that. And I don't know anything about what those costs are, but those are things that I know that parents have to factor in. And that's a concern of mine too. I feel like we're kind of in a fishbowl, kind of being a little bit of guinea pigs. And I realize at some point somebody has to make those decisions, but I just know personally, I feel a little nervous voting on some of this, not knowing so many of these answers and, which way the scale's going to weigh. I don't know if that was a question, but it was a comment.
Understandable.
And do keep in mind, it's a presentation, and you will be getting a lot of information. Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I just have a couple questions. At the beginning, you mentioned that everybody wasn't unanimously in favor of this. How did your vote turn out?
To be very precise, where we were in agreement was, what is the survey going to ask? In essence, the 3 options. As a side note, we talked for a very brief moment of what's called a win schedule, what I need, which is kind of a faux 5-day schedule. That didn't have any legs. So our discussions focused mostly on status quo 1-to-1, the 2-to-2, and the 4-day. We were not tasked, and nor were our discussions on which one do you like. At best, we split up in terms of, as a group, which one are you in favor for? Come up with the pros and cons for both. But that was in light of creating a survey. Our purpose was to find reasonable and appropriate information in terms of models that we could then give to the parents and to the staff as a survey. So to be very precise, that was where we agreed. And when we agreed with that, there were still disagreements about who liked the 4-day, Yeah. But that wasn't our task. That wasn't our mandate to do that. It was just getting the most accurate, precise, and clean information, overview information to the parents and the staff so they could take the survey.
Okay. My other question, you've referenced this school district in Warren County, but you've also mentioned that there are like 2,000, or have you looked at other states? Because I know there's heavy concentrations of 4-day calendars in other states. Have you looked at
Only
those?
through the research that I and we did. Most of the research I aimed for were scholarly journal articles about the efficacy of this, as well as neutral news articles as I could find, emphasizing and highlighting this.
Okay.
So Did I contact other districts? No, honestly did not, but I'm getting my information through references of those districts as well, and you'll see that in at least the links that you'll be provided.
Okay, I appreciate it. Does anybody have any other questions?
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you're basing this, I mean, this is an interesting one. You guys, how long have you guys been working on this?
The focus group?
Yeah.
When did we start?
We first met in May
Yeah.
as a focus group, but the concept came up in February, I believe, of IBN for interest-based
No, but I'm saying as far as
negotiations.
this focus group, how long have you guys been working together?
May.
Yeah, May,
May.
and I think
Okay.
there was a meeting in the summer too, right? Wasn't there something
was
like
a
that?
meeting in the
We lose
summer,
track. It was
yes.
so much fun.
So, no, I mean, I appreciate the work, so please take my questions as curiosity, not...
No. But let's just say almost a goodly year.
Okay. What is when we think about the younger kids, what's the impact? I mean, I appreciate the fact that we get more family time. That's a great positioning, but some family may go, well, that'd be all fine and great, but we work. So, yes, we might have daycare, but here's the thing. If that's at a cost, my concern then would be, well, we bring up the word private school and charter schools all the time, just as well as we bring up money. So are we pushing people to other alternatives because we're trying to I'm just saying there's a lot of points, and we have, as a board, a month to figure this out? And make a decision based on what the collective presentation is going to be?
There will be a level of inconclusiveness, and I think we've established that.
Yeah.
Both in terms of the research that has been done as well as the actual implementation of a 4-day amongst other districts. This is a new thing.
Yeah, no,
And so there are going to be some non-empirical things you're going to have to consider. If it is purely about money and a 5-day, I'm going to be honest with you, in the district, the research shows this, there will be parents who will leave.
Right.
If it's about quality of academics and education and the quality of teachers, our bet is that's our focus here. Parents will have to make the decision, and there will be no clean yes or no factor to this. And we're trying to emphasize that while we see this as a good forward discussion for you and the cabinet,
Yep.
there are some question marks that may not actually get an answer for the next 20 years. That being said, here we are because we see this as, of all the alternatives we discussed, as the most viable for our district, as the most effective, and also as a promotion, and let's talk about, as a marketing factor. Because the other thing is this, and I can't speak about Scottsdale or Dysart or PV, but what the research has borne out is that if we as a district do a 4-day, that is a positive marketing point. But if other districts do it before us, yes, it will negatively affect or basically make everything moot. So on a marketing level as well, there's that positive. I don't want to say let's do it before something happens, but there's a timeliness to this as well in terms of promotion and marketing that has to be considered.
Yeah. Well, I would say every district's facing that same problem
exactly.
as far as
Yeah.
I've gone to every district. Funny enough, it's that time of year. And every district is saying the same thing. Teachers aren't getting paid. So even these other schools with bonds and overrides are suffering some of the same outcomes. So the question becomes, what is the right solution? Obviously from a retention play, but also, again, our job up here is number one is putting the students at the forefront of every decision we make, and that is going to be a fun decision in a few weeks. So thank you. Thank you all for doing the work.
I have one more question, sorry. In the research that's been done, is there any data that states what happened with enrollment? You know what I mean? In that first year, whatever? That would be interesting to...
It would, and I apologize. That's hard to find because a lot of the scholarly research was on the effect of student population that is there, if that makes sense. So things like the culture, bullying, the negative aspects. If it talks about enrollment, unfortunately, it's sort of as a cursory mention over something bigger. It hasn't stopped me from finding it, but overt data like that has been very hard to find, to be quite honest.
Okay, Mr. Hazeltine, I've known you for a while, and we've had many, many good, long conversations about things. So, as a teacher, I'm intrigued by this, kind of on both sides. So, as a teacher that is presenting this to us, I would like to know, excuse me, your thought process on why you think this is a good thing, and how it counteracts the negatives that you encountered when you did this.
Okay. So to be appropriate, I'm going to speak for myself right now, just
Right.
to make that very clear. I know in IBN, I was that irritating person because the binder's right over there with this much research on the 4-day. I'm very much in favor of it. I like to think different, and I think this gives an opportunity to reconfigure and to bring us into a more modern way of teaching and running a school. As a teacher, we need to stop teaching the way we taught 50 years ago. So we're not necessarily talking condensed time in the 4-day, but with scheduling possibilities within the school and that 4-day with the support of the PLC model that we use, which can very much support that 4-day in helping teachers, including myself, because I'm applying myself to this, in looking at how can we do this differently. Not because we're slammed for time, but because we have students who are not us when we were that age. So there's also the idea that what teachers need most is time, and not necessarily in the classroom, but that Friday, either at school or at home, and that's an IBN issue, but let's just pretend it's at home. The reality is teachers are working because we do a 90-hour-a-week job in less than 40, and we need that time. And that is, and the research bears this out, a great benefit to teachers. That freedom of being able to do school and teaching is exciting to me. For me personally, that the traditional model is a factory model. And a lot of the 4-day models that we see in the country, they've also adopted a different schedule within the school to implement project-based learning, problem-based learning, strong PLC, coalitions and processes in the school. I see ultimately a 4-day as respecting teachers for what they do, a sad acknowledgement that I agree with you, but I don't see money coming anywhere. And with the assumption that there ain't no money to be had, all we have is time. This respects a teacher's time. It allows them to be much more of a professional educator rather than the hired help. And that's strong, but in many districts and in many voices from the teachers, that's the feeling they have. This brings that professionalism back because it respects them for their time. And for me, I see nothing but a benefit.
Thank you.
Okay.
Dr. Jensen, I have a question for you. Sorry. Course catalog, EVIT, all these different pieces that play a hand in this. Mm-hmm. How does the student, how will we navigate that? Maybe too soon on this question, but it was something I was thinking about listening to this. There's already some challenging making sure the kids get what they need to achieve the goals that they're trying to achieve, and then you throw in whether it be EVIT or some other types of things going on. How in a 4-day do we manage that? Because we're basically somewhat losing a day, right? If And again, this is your world, not mine. So I'm assuming if I'm compressing, my choices compress with that.
Correct. We're somewhat losing a day, which that would then, part of this would have to be answered during IBN because we would need to look at some of those instructional minutes because the state recently changed, and instead of requiring number of days, they require instructional minutes. And so some of that would be there. In terms of EVIT, EVIT's on a 2-2-2 calendar, so they don't match us at all. Our students are already going to EVIT when we're on break, and they're on break when we're here. So the EVIT part would not be a problem. And in terms of the course catalog, same thing. I don't see that there would be any difference. It would be similar to if we were to adjust the start and end time of the school day. You know, we'd add a few minutes or take away a few minutes. So the teachers would adjust their teaching styles. And as Mr. Hazeltine said, it couldn't be we're filling up a 58-minute time block of me lecturing at you. That doesn't work. We all know that. And if we're thinking that the students aren't going to have anything to do on Fridays, my guess is we could do some creative off, like where we give an assignment and then they do some work online or something else on those Fridays. There's a world of possibilities we would explore for the Fridays, but in terms of the course catalog, it would not affect that in any way. Some people have mentioned special ed minutes as well. Yep. Same thing. We write special ed minutes in an IEP. It's individualized for each individual child. And so those minutes are whatever that individual child needs. That wouldn't change. We still provide whichever minutes that particular child needs to meet their goals.
Thank you.
Yes.
Do we have a plan? Let's say this passes and we go to a 4-day work week. Do we have a outline already in place? This is what our implementation plan is going to be and we're going to massage certain pieces of it, or would we start on day one to construct that? Day one meaning once it was passed, yes, prior to the 25
Good question, Member Ulmer. I will say we have some ideas. However, other than what you see in front of you in terms of that, the student calendar is what you see. That's that plan. Like that would move forward. And then we would build all of the infrastructure and everything behind it. The biggest issues would be adjusting some pay rates and things like that for classified staff, whatever that would need to be so that they're not receiving pay cuts. So we'd need to work through that, and that would, again, largely be done in interest-based negotiations. So we have not gone down into the great depths of saying, well, are we going to start school at 7:10 or at 7:15 or 7, or what are we going to do? We have not gone down those trails because it's always like, why bother if you know we're not going to flesh out two different options. And so initially we didn't go down that because we hadn't done the survey and we kind of anticipated some different results. And then when the results came back, we said, well, we better put some colors on the grids for the calendar and we better look at how this would actually look. And so we have a lot of that going, but it's not fleshed out in terms of let's just roll it out and everything would be done. However, people would know their vacations, people would know which days are off. So that part would be done.
Anybody else? Well, thank you again. You guys did an incredible job with your presentation, and I sincerely appreciate the time, effort, energy, and dedication that went into this. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, item 2.2, World Language Presentation, presented by Dr. Jensen.
Thank you, President Busby, members of the board. This evening I'm presenting the World Languages Update, and the purpose of this presentation is to inform the governing board members and the public of the current state of world languages in the district as requested by Member Dan Moore on September 26, 2024. I forgot a period on that slide, sorry. Currently, these are the world languages programs that we offer in our school district. We have Spanish at Desert Willow Elementary, French at Desert Sun Academy, Spanish and French at Sonoran Trails Middle School, and Spanish, French, and Mandarin at Cactus Shadows High School. At Desert Sun Academy, these are our French students. So you'll notice we have not continued offering it for kinder, first, and second because it hasn't been something that we've been able to staff for the few number of students. Even the 9, 13, and 12 has been difficult. And then the sixth graders, there's 5 students. They are actually, I'm going to say it's like passive French. They're supporting younger grades in French. They're not receiving direct instruction during the school day because we have one French teacher and she serves those other 34 students. Spanish at Desert Willow is much healthier. We have 37 kindergartners. You can read it on the down. I'm not going to narrate that for you. Languages at Sonoran Trails. So Spanish, we have 1A and 1B. They take 1A for 7th grade year, 1B 8th grade year in order to get 1 year of Spanish. You see the numbers? We did not have, this was the first year we did not have enough students at Sonoran Trails to offer Mandarin. Languages at Cactus Shadows. Again, you can see not much I can explain about that. I guess the one thing I will say is the SL and the HL for IB courses, so 6 students in SL means they will be HL students next year. Or they better be. World Languages Celebrations. So we have a seal of biliteracy and 30 students received that honor this year. Our 11 students received, we explained this before, but we have our seal of biliteracy. We have the Arizona, the Cactus Shadows, and then the global seal. And so they progressively become more difficult. We're proud that 28 students did receive college credit for passing their AP and IB exams. This is a repeat actually of last month's during our achievement presentation, and I'm going to leave it at that. More celebrations for students passing, small numbers, but really good percentages. Some of our challenges and opportunities, as you're well aware, hiring qualified language teachers is a major challenge for us. I am excited to celebrate that our Sonoran Trails middle school teacher has arrived, and we're happy to have her. Providing dual enrollment options for our third-year language students. I think it's important to note here that I'm not going to back up so I don't make everybody dizzy, but if we were offering dual enrollment for our Spanish 3 class, we'd have 125 students receiving college credit compared to the 28 students who received college credit by passing their AP and IB courses. So that's something we're actively pursuing for next year. We need a teacher with a master's degree in that content area. We have a teacher with a master's degree in that content area. So now we just need to kind of do the paperwork and make it happen. So that's something we're excited about adding for next year in our course catalog. Also, responding to the interests and needs of our student population. Clearly, you can see up there we do have fewer students interested in world languages than maybe in years past. Many colleges and universities are no longer requiring it. As a former Spanish teacher myself, I'm very disappointed in that, but that is the case. And so we do have fewer students going after those, and instead, the good news is they're choosing a CTE pathway, and they're actually completing some of those certificates in those courses. So that's exciting, but again, shouldn't it be about Patty's passion? It's about the student's passion, so we'll go there.
It's okay.
And with that, any questions?
Okay, so thank you for this. So what was it, a few years back we got rid of Mandarin?
Yes, you could put it that way.
I'm a simple simpleton over here.
We no longer offered Mandarin at the elementary schools in 2020, I believe is when that was.
Is there any conversation or thought process short of the word staffing funds and everything we've heard tonight? Is there a thought process in bringing that back? Obviously, there's been talk with what's going on off the 17. There's all these different variables of other districts getting ready to take some of that headcount that might be coming with the semiconductor plant.
So what you're saying is there may be some of the students who left in 2020 who want to come back.
Could be, or there's opportunity to draw some people over.
So if we have, as you see up here, if we have the number of students to make a class, we are happy to offer the class. But even at 11 students, it's really hard for me to justify a class for 11 students when I have 40 students sitting in dual enrollment English or in English 9, 10, whatever. And so,
is there a correlation because of the fact it's not offered in the different grades? Because Mandarin's only offered in high school right now, then, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if there's no progression path, there wouldn't be attainment at high school level.
That's a good conclusion. So we did not have students who signed up for it at Sonoran Trails. We didn't have enough students. I think we had to make 8, maybe. Jill, you remember? I think we had 8 students sign up for 7th grade Mandarin at the middle school, and we were going to have to combine. In fact, that may have been 7th and 8th grade combined. And so we couldn't justify having our Mandarin teacher from the high school drive over to Sonoran Trails for 8 students for 1 period a day, which costs us, I'm going to say, roughly $8,000, something like that.
So are we just going to stick with Spanish and French?
Based off of the student interest right now, that is where it's heading, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Now, Member Moore, let me just add, we are committing to finishing those students out. So we're not going to take it from a student who's in the program. So there's 29 students in Mandarin 2. If they're all freshmen,
right,
we will do everything we can.
Until you get to 0.
Until we get to 0.
Correct.
Short of, if the teacher leaves, which she's fabulous, there's nothing I can do.
And just, there's no funding or options grants or anything that can be taken advantage of for any of the grades that would potentially help us bring some of that attraction back. Because we don't know what we don't know because we don't offer it technically.
Correct. I don't want to say there's never any options, but so Title IV is one of the grants that we receive, a small amount of money each year from the federal government, and that does have languages as an option. We do use it some as an option. However, currently, that would mean I'm taking money from whatever it's currently funding, which is arts mostly. And so I would have to take the money from there to do something else. So we could look at that, but it's everything at this point is a
I
game
understand.
of chess.
I'm just kind of looking at exhaust every option to find that gem, wherever it might be.
I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
You mentioned one of the challenges is hiring qualified teachers. What makes up a qualified teacher to do these? I remember back when we did do Mandarin, we sometimes had teachers coming over from China. What is the process there?
Yes, good question, Member Fortney, and I'm going to let Dr. Hendrickson answer part of this because, it is a teacher who's certified to teach world languages is really what we're looking for, and so we do often end up going internationally to find them, and then we work with them on the J1 visa. It's a big process, and he can...
Yeah, Member Fortney, members of the board. Just like any specialized teaching position at the high school, there just continues to be a shortage of teachers that are in those specialized fields. And so despite our recruitment efforts to bring in, I'm going to echo, current in-state individuals who are specialized in one of those languages, we do rely heavily on our different visa sponsors that help us attract and recruit teachers from other countries. They do have a quite extensive vetting process, making sure that they are their certification in their home country, their undergraduate and graduate degree work, a lot of them with graduate degree work, is accepted in the U.S. To the same level of degree. And then from there, our staff, our administrative staff, will then continue to vet them, interview them, and make sure that they're a right fit. They do have to meet certain proficiency standards with their spoken and written language as well. Obviously, one of the arguments that always comes is, the ability to teach the language, but the ability to instruct in the language, in a different culture. And so that's always a factor that we have to take into consideration, making sure with the work that Dr. Jensen and her team with professional development that we're supporting those teachers in the best way we can when we do get them. But more and more often our foreign language speaking teachers do come from outside the country.
Any other questions? Thank you, Dr. Jensen, for that presentation. Item 3.1, action consent. Is there a motion?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. 3.1 passes. All right. Item 4.1, call to the public. All right, call to the public according to ARS 38-431.01H. Governing board members may not discuss or take legal action on matters raised during an open call to the public. The only allowable responses a governing board member may make are: 1, board member may respond if there is a direct criticism of the board member; 2, a board member may direct staff to look into a matter; or 3, a board member can ask to have this item placed on a future agenda. Speakers need to be mindful of what they say when presenting to the board. Inappropriate comments could be considered slanderous. Because of the number of public comments we have, each speaker will have 2 minutes to speak, and when you come to the mic, please state your name. Our first individual is Catherine Fay.
Tell me when. Hello? Testing.
Hello. Okay, you're up.
Ready. When you look at, this is about the 4-day school week, and I'm going to have a condensed version here. When you look at the parent survey, you have to add the 2 5-day calendar choices. Both have early release, and then compare that to the 4-day choice. Parents overwhelmingly chose the current 5-day school week. The vacations and breaks were the only difference. That is also what needs to be presented. One of the things when looking through this presentation is what happened to students first. There's a lot of talk about research. Well, research shows evidence that for suburban communities, such as us, by the way, we are suburban, not rural, moving to a 4-day school week decreases academic performance, especially in math and reading. For rural communities like Page, Wickenburg, Gila Bend, a 4-day may not have adverse effects like it does in our district. This administration made the decision this school year, without being transparent to parents, I might add, to remove all science choices at the high school to make all students take specific science classes. When I asked why, I was told it was because we needed to improve our AZ science test scores. Therefore, I would like to see direct evidence that moving to a 4-day school week would increase the AZ science score, all the other state test scores, and the ACT. Because right now there's no evidence showing of such. Also, it does not improve enrollment. I can tell you it won't. There are so many other factors I don't have time to talk about right now, but the bottom line is this. What makes the saddest thing of this whole point is that we're being asked to sacrifice our kids' best interests in academics and our district enrollment for a maybe that a teacher might stay. There is no guarantee and no factual evidence that this will work. Thank you.
Nicole Smith.
Hi, thank you for having me. So as I was reviewing the literature, just a quick overview, like it was stated before, a lot of it was referencing the rural communities, and it did not correspond to our type of suburban population. Some other factors that weren't considered are a decrease in some of our housing values because we're a less desirable community for many of our working families. My biggest question is, have we asked the teacher what they want? It was assumed they wanted time. Maybe, for example, like my first grade teacher, I had to replace her chair that was broken because she just didn't feel the need to ask for that because it would impact other finances. So I think our priority needs to be asking the teachers what they want before we just assume that it's time. Also, when we look at some of those slides, the 4-day school week, it didn't have a half day for parent-teacher conferences. It didn't exhibit any of those other factors like teacher conferences. They said it's going to be on a Friday. Well, how does that actually help the teachers then if they're expected to be still working on that day off? We also didn't talk about the ancillary staff, the hourly staff. What's their impact? Now they only have 4 days to make an income. How are we going to get bus drivers to come to our district to take our kids to school? I have a lot of comments here. I'll tell you, when you're asking about, Ms. Ulmer, about parents and what we've talked about with retention, I can tell you I went to dinner with 8 moms. 4 of us have now had scheduled tours outside of this district with the assumption that this was going to pass. And really, when we're considering our students, we kept hearing about time. We're not considering the students. Is their sports more important than their education? For some, yes. But for the majority of us, we selected Cave Creek Unified School District because it has a solid education, not so much about the sports. Thank you.
All right. Colleen DeMayo, she will have 4 minutes because she has combined her time with another individual.
Hi, I'm Colleen DeMayo. I'm a parent of 2 girls at Black Mountain. I'm a BMES, Dams, and Cactus Shadows graduate. I'm also a clinical social worker and worked at Sonoran Trails. I have extensive experience in research and instruction at the University of Chicago and presently at ASU. I was lucky enough to get the research that the committee was using via Dr. Jensen. I found that it's shaky at best because, first of all, there's a general consensus that there's limited research available on the subject matter, and the time frame is not long enough to draw conclusions. And 2, the schools studied were in large part located in rural areas that are not relevant. Sorry, I'm very nervous. So as a matter of fact, Dr. Jensen's presentation notes Greg Klingensmith shares how happy they are in Warren County about the 4-day week. I looked into that district. It occupies the western 2/3 of Warren County, Missouri, and covers 240 square miles. It's vastly different than Cave Creek Unified School District, and I think that is a notable distinction. So since meeting with Dr. Jensen and going to coffee with the superintendent last month, I did pull the largest, most current studies and data available that analyze the student test scores from 2009 to 2019. I love data. So this landmark study that I'm noting is from Emily Morton out of Stanford, and it looks at the 4-day model in Colorado, Oregon, Idaho, and Oklahoma. The difference in differences approach, which basically means we're comparing changes over time with a control and study group, found that K-8 students were noted to have a significant 7% decline in reading and larger negative effects, 8% in math and 11% in reading, after implementing the 4-day school week in non-rural schools specifically. However, for Hispanic students in particular, going to 4 days a week made less progress in math during the school year than white students on the same schedule. White students made less progress in math than Native American students during the 11-year study, and girls were more negatively impacted than males when it came to scores in math and reading. So where this was implemented and studied in Colorado, Idaho, Oklahoma, and Oregon, the 4-day week was noted to cause an 11% decrease in employment among married moms whose children are between the ages of 5 and 13. It was specifically noted to occur when a woman has a 4-year college degree or greater, and no decrease was noted among married fathers' employment status, suggesting that the stress is primarily borne by working moms. So what happens after Fridays are not good enough? Do we move to 3 days a week, multi-age classrooms through high school? This committee's recommendation and the cherry-picked research that they used to arrive at this recommendation are gross misrepresentation and an egregious minimization of the concerns of a 4-day week. A 20% reduction in student school time is a disservice to the students and an insult to parents and guardians who trust this district to make an informed and well-researched recommendation. I'd also like to say that childcare on a Friday is not the equivalent of education. If anyone from the board or here would like the research that I used or would like my sources, I would love to present them to you. Thank you.
I would love those studies.
Vanessa Clifton.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Vanessa, and I have 3 students in the Cave Creek School District that have all attended since kindergarten. I'm here to speak about the 4-day school week as well, and I want to be perfectly transparent in saying that I did not submit the survey because I did not feel that there was enough information provided for parents to make an informed decision. And after listening tonight, some of my questions have been answered, but I still feel like multiple times we've heard it said, we haven't gotten down to the nitty gritty. Well, I want to know the nitty gritty. I want to know, what are our hours of education going to be for our kids? How are the youngest kids in our district going to be affected by this? Are they going to be sitting in a classroom for 7 hours? What's the absence policy going to be? Like, you know, we have limited absences right now. If we go down to a 4-day week, if a student misses 3 to 4 days because they are actually ill, how far is that going to set them back in their education? How is support staff going to be affected? What's the impact on school-related sports? Are we going to have Friday night lights? Are, you know, winter practices going to happen? ECS, how much is it going to cost for families to take advantage of ECS on Fridays to take care of their younger children that can't stay home alone? You know, the teachers, going back to being said that the teachers now are going to have a Friday off, but if we're using that for conferences and learning, how many of those Fridays are going to be impacted for them that they're not actually getting that 4-day week, which is what we're using to, you know, draw more teachers in? Are the students, are they going to be able to take the seniors 5 blocks in a row and still get an early release? Or now we have to go to 5 blocks, they have to take a lunch. They don't get much of an early release day. So I really feel like until we have the nitty gritty, nobody can make an informed decision about this. Thank you.
Andrew Cupo.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Andrew Cupo. I'm a teacher at Cactus Shadows, but I'm here of my own volition to advocate that you deeply consider the 4-day work week. Listening to the parents tonight, I do understand their concerns. One of the concerns that we had in the IBN committee last year was retaining teachers, right? We know that education occurs because quality teachers provide that education, right? I'd like to think we trust Cave Creek schools because of those teachers. In a survey we gave last year to teachers, we asked them what are things that would likely keep them to stay in our district. The number 1 was pay. We can't provide that. Number 2, by 1%, was a 4-day work week. I can teach down at a district down the road, work 5 days a week and get paid 20% more. Here, if I work 5 days, I get paid what a teacher there gets paid in 4 days. And then they work a 5th day and they get paid more. I think the 4-day work week is a pretty even compromise between saying if you want to work in Cave Creek, yeah, you'll get paid 80% less than you get paid in another district. However, you only work 80% of the time. You'll be 100% productive in what you do with that time. Our students will be as successful in that time frame. But you, as the teacher, are being valued for what you're worth instead of devalued for what you're not worth by being paid less than what local and nearby districts are paid. I encourage you to really think about it. I understand it's a very tough decision. I do not envy you. And I do commiserate with the parents who would take on a burden maybe in some ways. But for too long, we've asked teachers to take on that burden. And I think it's time that we ask ourselves, you know, can we do something? Can we provide? And this is one way we can provide. And I would hope our community could get behind that and really support the people who are really making a difference in those students' lives. Thank you.
Thank you. Jesse Nelson.
Hi, I'm Jessie Nelson. I have 3 elementary-age kids in the district. Also here to speak on the 4-day calendar. I guess my biggest question, when this first came about, I was strongly opposed. I've tried to wrap my mind around it. I'm very, very pro-teacher, and we have benefited from some amazing teachers and administrators in my personal educational experience and my kids' educational experience. I don't know if this is a, well, option A or option B consideration. the 4-day week, one of my biggest concerns is it's a significant decrease in instructional hours and on-campus time for the kids. So 15 to 20% based on my quick rough math. But that's not just academic achievement and test scores, but kids, I think we've learned, need to be at school for academic reasons, emotional reasons, social reasons. We are fighting against the screens. We are fighting against the isolation that kids are experiencing, and there's a lot of research to support that. So I think we would all agree that physical presence on school has way more benefits than just academic achievement, and I don't know if there's an option to consider the 4-day week to show the support to teachers, but then also extend the school year in a way that we're not cutting so many hours on campus or instructional hours. And then also just to piggyback on the unknowns of it, I don't know, why does this have to get voted on in November? So is there an opportunity to take a little bit more time? You guys have put in tons of time already, but to work out some of the finer kinks now that we know that there is support behind it, especially from the teachers, and say, okay, this is what it's going to look like to give families a better comfort level with, we're not just going to be out there floundering on a Friday. So thank you.
Thank you. Elizabeth Siggett. Did I pronounce that right? Okay. I'm sorry.
All right. Is this on? Okay. Hi.
Hi.
All right. Good evening. My name is Elizabeth Siggety. I'm a parent of 2 girls who attend Lone Mountain, and I'm also an employee of the district. I've worked as a school counselor at Cactus Shadows for the past 2 years. This is my 3rd year with the district. I would like to say a few words in support of the 4-day school week beginning next school year. First, I believe this option will help with staff retention. From my experience, I have worked with a different counseling team the 3 years that I have been here. Not only does this affect the main office staff at the high school, as well as the district office staff due to the constant retraining that goes into our team, it also affects our students. I've heard from different individuals that some students are hesitant to come up to meet with their counselor because they do not have a relationship with them. This is in no way fault to our current team. I've had a couple of my own students tell me that they feel so lucky and blessed because I've stayed here for 3 years. It's exhausting for students, especially those with trauma, to keep retelling their stories to a different counselor each year. As a result, students are missing out on key conversations that have to do with post-secondary education and social-emotional help. Also, I believe that this will help with burnout rates of staff, especially staff who are parents in the district, employees in the district. Secondly, we are struggling with student enrollment, especially at the high school. I've seen enrollment go down every year that I have been with the district. And so maybe having Fridays off could help with this. Lastly, I believe having this 4-day school week will help with children's mental health. Having an extra day each week could help with stress levels by providing more opportunities for self-care for students. Having an extra day off each week would give students perhaps a day to unwind, catch up on sleep. Most weekends for many families are spent dedicated time to extracurricular activities and getting ready for the school week. My girls are only 5 and 8, but I'm already starting to hear them say how tired they are each night, even though they're getting enough sleep. I believe that this would benefit
Thank you.
students
Your time is up.
at the middle and high school levels. So thank you for listening to my thoughts. I know this is a hard decision for everyone.
Eric Lambrecht. Okay. All right. Next up is Allison Zolka, and she will have 4 minutes because she is combining her time with another individual.
My name's Allison Zilka, and I'm speaking on my own experiences. I've been an economics and social studies teacher for 26 years, 23 of which have been at Cactus Shadows. In my experiences, teaching has changed more in the past 5 years than the previous 21 years combined. Aside from the acute challenges faced during COVID, the biggest challenge is competition. Prior to COVID, both consumers and producers, the students and myself, function in a largely non-competitive market. The students complied to meet the expectations, were satisfied with the level of service being provided, and those who did find their way over to Pinnacle always seemed to find their way back. COVID changed the whole world's thinking and taught society that things can be done differently, successfully, and with the same efficacy. Education was not immune to this paradigm shift. Competition from quality online schools, other public school districts, private schools, and the financial advantage of the repackaged voucher program changed the rules of the game. The students are our customers, and seemingly overnight, they became extremely informed. Separate from their parents, the students themselves demanded more of the product they were receiving. I've even heard that we have 8th graders in our district that themselves are seeking out and shopping schools, and that themselves, aside from their parents. Gen Z is a very pragmatic cohort of students. If they do not perceive value in a product, they view the time spent as a personal loss of efficiency and seek alternatives. Competition is the ultimate regulator in the marketplace. It forces producers to improve the customer experience, increase the quality of their product and level of service, or risk decreased sales, or in our case, decreased enrollment. There is nothing in my 26 career that has pushed my practice forward more than the increased student demands and competition we are experiencing right now. In the past 4 years, this once very traditional teacher has embraced technology, personalized learning, flexible learning, learning rotations, and modern student engagement strategies. My lesson planning guidepost every day is that each student leaves thinking that the quality of instruction they received will be hard to match at any other school. In many ways, education has become like running a business. The stakes are high, and the energy required to deliver the post-COVID product and level of customer service and experience demanded is taking a significantly higher toll on teachers' physical and mental well-being. Competition is good for society. It requires all of us to be better. However, the consequence in education is a tired teacher brain. Aside from ineffectiveness, increased irritability, reduced motivation, and loss of focus, a tired teacher brain cannot exercise good judgment. Making decisions is imperative in professions that serve the public, as we are responsible for the well-being of others. While the types of decisions teachers make may differ from police officers, ER doctors, the impact of these decisions on the physical and emotional safety for our students can be equally consequential, especially when it comes to a time of crisis. For example, 2 years ago, I was challenged with making careful decisions to keep my students calm and safe during a real lockdown, all while attempting not to upset the suspected armed students sitting right next to them. It was my classroom that was on TV. Crisis aside, daily teacher decisions directly impact students by influencing their overall learning experience, academic performance, social development, and self-esteem. Teacher decision-making plays an important role in student outcomes, and we can't make good decisions with a tired brain. In planning for next year and beyond, I encourage the board to be forward-thinking and solution-oriented as it addresses ways to alleviate the tired teacher brain. So in sum, I guess what I am trying to convey is this: teaching has become exhausting. I come home every day absolutely spent. I've given everything I could to meet the academic and social needs of my students. I'm tired, we're tired, and we can't be the best for the kids if our brains are running on empty.
Thank you, Allison. Our last one is Jaron Davidson.
Hi, my name's Jaron. I'm a sophomore at Cactus Shadows. I've been in the district since kindergarten. I've been at Desert Sun, Horseshoe Trails, Sonoran Trails, and now Cactus Shadows. And I'm speaking in support of the 4-day school week. From an academic standpoint, it's clear the option going forward in Cave Creek Unified School District. Primarily, a 4-day school week will lead to students having less fatigue and greater focus resulting from a 3-day weekend. And longer class periods can also lead to a deeper exploration of complex topics, especially in more challenging classes like I'm in, like AP and honors classes, and also IB classes. In addition, a 4-day school week gives more opportunities for extracurricular enrichment. In my experience, I do a lot of community service, and I'm in an internship, and it'd be a lot easier for me to reach those hours. And that can be easily done with a Friday or a Monday off without school. For students that need extra help, the day can also be used for targeted intervention and tutoring sessions. And also longer school periods could optimally lead to targeted learning and various instructional methods that accommodate different styles of learning. Overall, I would recommend the board adopt the 4-day school week, and I believe it's clearly the best option going forward for CCUSD from an academic standpoint. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Item 5, old business, we have none. No new business, so item 7, adjournment.
Motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. All right, we are adjourned, and it is 7:34.